Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about shading and blending with graphite. So first we need to know about value. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of something. And to demonstrate, I've got the softball here and a flashlight. So as I move the flashlight around on the softball and shining the light upon it, you can kind of watch how the shadow at the base moves and also how the values on the softball itself change. So we see the brightest light where the light is hitting directly. It slowly fades into darker values, and then there's a little bit of reflected light. And the reflected light is kind of when the light bounces off of the paper back onto the object. Another thing you can notice is that the closer the light is, the smaller the highlight is. The further away the light is, the larger the highlight is going to be. And it's kind of the opposite for a shadow. So the closer the light is, the bigger the shadow is. And then the further away the light is, the smaller the shadow is. And this is important to pay attention to because we talk about lighting. So if we have just a backlight, we're going to have just one shadow and one source of light. If we have two lights, you can see how the shadow splits. And then with three lights, we get almost an even lighting across everything. So let's get started with the drawing. You know, a lot of y'all complain about drawing circles. Well, there's an easy way around that. Just find something round. Trace around it. It's pretty easy. You can draw circles by practicing also, but you know, there are a lot of round things around the house, so find something round, trace around it. Voila, circle. It's not so bad. The key thing, if we're going to draw a sphere, draw it lightly, because some of the areas we don't want to really have a hard edge. So now when I begin working with the circle, I first need to identify where my light is coming from. So my light source, in this case, I'm going to have it kind of off to the side. So I'm just going to draw this little light bulb here so that you can get an idea of where the light is coming from. So if we're off to the side, that means the area furthest away from the light is going to be the darkest. So the area closest to the light is going to be our highlight. Now if you notice, I'm holding my pencil off to the side, and that is going to give me kind of a wider area of graphite to work with, so it's going to give me some smoother lines as I'm shading. Now also note how I am curving around the form. So if I want to make this look round, I need to make my marks round as well. As I get closer to the highlight, I am using less pressure on the pencil so that it gets lighter. Now when I start with the shading, it's not really looking super pretty just yet, but it will get smoother as I go along. This is basically just to give me an idea of the form, so following those round things. Now when I get to the shadow needs to be on the opposite edge of the light, and just like we saw with the softball, the closer the light is to the form, the longer the shadow will be. The further away the light is, the shorter the shadow will be. I'm going to start going in and darkening the shadows as I go along. So this area where the light is furthest from on the sphere is called the cast shadow. So I'm darkening that, and you can see I've kind of flattened the pencil a little bit so it works better. So I'm just going to label a few things for you. So like I said earlier, you want to vary your pressure for value changes. The core shadow is the darkest area of our sphere. The cast shadow is the shadow beneath it. Oftentimes there's some reflected light in there, And then we have the highlights and mid-range values closer to the light. So I'm going to keep going in and developing these values and kind of following the form again. So we call those cross contour lines. So they're going across the form and following the shape of the form. And I'm slowly building up values. So if you notice at the bottom there, I have left a little bit of a highlight at the bottom, and that's the reflected light. So you may have noticed that with the softball, that some of the paper reflected that light back onto the bottom of the sphere. So we're just going to leave a light or a lighter value there underneath the core shadow. And I'm just going to continue filling these in. So with the cast shadow, you don't really have a rounded form to go with. It's a flat piece of paper basically that the sphere is sitting on. So I don't need to worry about going across the form so much. It's more of a flat value. So as long as my shading is sort of thorough and well filled in, I'm not going to have any issues with it seeming out of place. I've grabbed a darker pencil. So I started with a 2B, which is kind of a slightly darker than your average regular writing pencil. This is a 5B pencil, so that means the lead is softer and it allows it to kind of get you some darker values. Of course, you can do this with just a regular writing pencil. I just happen to only have drawing pencils at home, so that's what I use. And you can see I use that 5B pretty frequently as it's so short and nubby. And I'm starting to really darken up those cast shadows and core shadows. And that's going to help create more volume in the form. Now here I have a blending stump, and we use the blending stump to kind of push the graphite around. So kind of like you would smudge with a finger or a paper towel or something. This is a little more controlled method. I prefer when I do my own drawings just to use my pencil and not shade with anything else. However, a lot of people prefer to use blending stumps to kind of smooth out their values. I think there's value in both. Personally, I think learning how to draw and learning how to shade is a matter of control. So you need to be able to control your pencil first before you can really do much of anything with a blending stump or anything else. Because if your shading is really sloppy before you use a blending stump, the blending stump is not going to fix it. You're just going to see sloppy lines underneath the blending. Another thing of note with the blending stump is that it tends to pick up the graphite, so you have to go back in again and layer more over it to get your dark values back. So as you can see, I'm going back in with the 5B pencil to bring back some of those darks that got lost as I started shading. So I'm moving around the form and across the form to kind of fill in the spaces and give it more volume as I'm working. And still using the side of the pencil. That's going to give you softer lines, not quite so sharp and hard. And I'm varying the pressure as I move closer to the highlight so that I don't have super dark marks up there. Now when I go back in with the blending stump, that kind of helps smooth things out again. And now I have a kneaded eraser. And these are really great for pulling out highlights because you can shape them however you want, and you can kind of like dab the eraser onto it, or I'm just pulling it across, and it's just slowly lifting up bits of the graphite. So not all of it, just a little bit. And one thing that's awesome about these erasers is they don't leave any residue. So now I've got an 8B pencil, and this is very close to just charcoal. It's very dark. It's the softest lead available before you get into charcoal. And I'm going to give a background here. So as you can see, there's the horizon or the table line. We always put it behind the sphere, not directly underneath it, because that doesn't really ever happen. And by giving the background this nice dark value, it's going to help set off the edges of the sphere and make it look a little more dimensional. To get a nice smooth black, it's going to take a lot of layers. So blending, smoothing, blending, layering, back and forth. And I'm just going to define that super dark cast shadow right at the base to give it a little more pop. So generally we practice doing these sort of value studies like a sphere or other geometric objects just as a way to learn control with our tools. So the more you can control your pencil, the better your drawings are going to look. So don't rely on the blending stump to make everything better for you. You want to be able to control the pressure and control the marks that you create with your pencils in order to create a good drawing. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.